Hi there, welcome back. Today I wanted to sit down and practice drawing some trucks. I have a painting coming up here pretty soon. I should be working on it next week, and it's going to include the St. Bernards that I studied a while ago and a truck, so we are going to be doing some studies today to prepare for that. So I wanted to talk about my approach to drawing these trucks and kind of the process. See if maybe that helps other people trying to learn how to draw more vehicles and such. So the way that I have started to learn how to draw vehicles, I start with a rectangular prism shape for the body, trying to gauge the perspective from the reference photo. And then I put on another box on top of it for the upper portion of the vehicle, so that's like where the windshield and cab of the truck is essentially. Once I have in those very basic shapes, I will tweak them a little bit, trying to get the perspective as best I can. More often than not, these vehicles are going to be in basically a 2-point perspective, so if you wanted to be more precise, you could do a perspective grid where you have like the horizon line and the 2 points, but I was not going to do all that. I just wanted to try to use boxes, and I think that it went pretty well using that method. Once I have a very general base for the shape, I start working from top to bottom with the windshield and start adding details. If I start at the bottom, that usually is the wheels of the truck, and I will often make the vehicle too short and mess up the proportions, and it makes it really hard to add in all of the details later on. So I have just found it easier to work from the top down. So getting in the windshield, I usually add in the windshield wipers while I'm doing that part, and then I also add on the windows on the door. After the windshield, I move on to the front of the car, or depending on the perspective, the portion that is closest to the viewer. So in the perspective that we have drawn, it'll be whichever part of the vehicle would be closer to the viewer. And for most of these, it is going to be the front of the truck, because for the illustration that I've been working on, the plan was to have the front of the truck facing the viewers. I didn't think about having it the other way, but it wouldn't show all of the characters involved in the scene. So that's why most of these have been showing the front of the vehicle. Then I work my way along the side and detail the back or parts receding into the background, depending on the perspective. So the sides are a part where I accidentally squish if I work from bottom to the top. There are usually some lines to indicate different folds in the metal. The sides are usually fairly consistent and will have lines going all the way down the sides of the vehicle, so it's a really good way to help understand the perspective for that back area. So you'll notice with some of my sketches, I will move on to the side and then kind of use the details from this side, the lines that are visible in the reference photo, to help me understand the perspective that the back of the truck is in. Once all of the proportions feel good on the body of the truck, then I start on the tires and other details. This is the windshield wipers if I haven't added them already, the vehicle branding, any logos or writing on the sides of the vehicles, the steering wheel, interior, and seats, the license plates, and the mirrors on the sides and the rear view. All of these are small details that really help make it look like a vehicle. Although I will note that in a couple of the reference photos that I had, there were not side mirrors on the truck, so that was an interesting thing to notice. I don't know why that is, but I just thought it was funny to notice. Something that I have had fun doing since my very little practice with drawing trucks and cars is that I like to just make up my own stuff on the license plates. I didn't do it in this sketchbook session, but I definitely plan to with the illustration that I have coming. Sometimes I wait until the end to shade the truck, and other times I put it in as I draw to help me differentiate the different parts. So if the very front of the truck is very detailed and complicated, and there's just like a lot of lines going in the same direction, that could confuse me throughout the drawing process if I'm forgetting how many lines there are, I will tend to try to shade to make it as easy as possible. I want to make sure that I'm also trying to understand the planes of the vehicle. That way when I go into painting next week, I can have a good understanding of how to shade the vehicles. The preparation for the painting that I'm working on, I'm making an entire video about the idea exploring process, and so that should be out on Saturday if you are interested in that and want to see more about how these study videos are going to be worked into my illustrations. And then I also wanted to talk about some key things that I learned while drawing these vehicles. The most difficult thing that I was really working on, and you'll see throughout the video process, is that drawing the tires is actually really difficult to also do while maintaining the perspective. You want to make sure that when you're looking at the vehicle as it's drawn, that the tires look like they're all at the same level. So you want them to kind of follow a perspective line and touch down kind of at the appropriate point for the vehicle's perspective, and that was really difficult to capture, especially with my second study. I really focus on that on the right side page while I go into drawing more 3/4 view of trucks. It was really difficult to capture that, and I think it really helped when I finally acknowledged that that was how I should be drawing it, because before I noticed that that was something that was important, I was drawing the tires in really wonky and they just did not look right, and that's because they did not match the perspective. I think that that truck still on the bottom left looks weird, but I think it's because I stylized it a little too much. It doesn't look quite like the reference, and I think that the perspective is a little bit more dramatic than it was in the reference photo. And finally, I really enjoy pushing the shapes when it comes to drawing vehicles. Once I identify the different shapes on the car, it's really fun to go in there and push the shapes on there to be more bubbly or more straight to give the vehicle more personality. My first two studies were definitely not my favorite. I think that they both turned out pretty wonky, but when I drew them, I was pretty proud of them despite their flaws. And I originally was only going to do the two of them, but I decided that I should get in as much practice as possible for the upcoming illustration that I have planned. So I continued on, and the third study that I did that was very small, I rushed through it and it ended up being my favorite, and that's kind of that's the type of truck, and that's the sketch that I'll be referencing when I go into drawing the truck in my illustration for next week. The fourth study is okay. I think the perspective still looks a little weird, especially for the tailgate, but other than that, I think that most of it looks pretty good. The side view truck, can't go wrong with that. I did find it interesting how the back tires were visible. I don't know why, but I kind of expected them to be kind of both off to the same side as the front tires, but they're kind of both viewed from in between those closest tires, if that makes any sense. Our sixth study was really fun. It was a little bit different than the ones that we had done before and was more of a farm truck. I really enjoyed drawing it, and I liked adding the little lights on top and drawing a different kind of side mirror. That was really fun to throw in there, and it was really interesting trying to capture the shapes of all of the machinery for the tires that are visible underneath the truck. I wanted to kind of capture them a little bit, but obviously not put in too much detail, because details weren't necessarily visible in the reference photo, so I just kind of wanted the shapes to be there. I'm actually really proud of that sketch. I think it turned out really good. That is also the one where I acknowledged that I also neglected to learn about different tread patterns. I feel like that could be a fun detail to throw into the illustration that I have planned, so that might be something that I think about when I'm diving into that finished piece. And the seventh study was probably my favorite to draw. It was really fun because of the bubbly shapes. I almost went in to add all of the rust marks because those were very interesting while I was looking at the reference photo, but I also didn't want to spend too much time on this study session. The eighth study, now that I'm looking back at it, it doesn't really look like a truck. It looks like a car. The perspective is kind of weird. Most of the back of the truck is supposed to be hidden in this perspective by the door. It's really strange, but I just left it how it was. All in all, I had a pretty fun time doing this spread. I wasn't very enthusiastic about it because perspective is one of those things that kind of scares me, since I don't have a very good grasp on it. But I think that it all turned out pretty well. It's got me excited to draw more things in the future that are going to be in some sort of perspective. I'm really looking forward to drawing different kinds of vehicles in the future. I know that vehicles can be a really complicated beast to tackle when you are trying to learn how to draw different things, and so that's why I wanted to definitely share my approach for trying to learn how to draw them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. If you have any questions or thoughts about this sketchbook session, you can always leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.